flash in the dark. Boy! Granny practically spat the word at the back of my head. I turned and saw her sitting bolt upright, copper eyes wide, and ears twitching backwards and forwards like she was straining to hear something. She snatched her rusty ear trumpet from beside the bed and jammed it into one of her ears. "What's wrong?" I asked, watching her face crease up with concentration. "Shh!" she hissed. "I thought I just heard—" She gasped again, then hurled herself out of bed, dropped the ear trumpet on the floor, and clomped to the window. Granny could move pretty fast when she wanted to, but it was normally only when she was scrambling for leftovers. "What?" I ran and I joined her at the window, with the jam jar lanterns all burning brightly. It was hard to see anything except our own mismatched reflections staring back at us. "What did you hear?" Granny ignored me. She clicked her crusty fingers for a second time, and every candle in the room instantly extinguished itself. Suddenly, the outside world rushed into view far below. There in the light of the street lamps were the other hotels and restaurants that lined the seafront. Peering out of the window, I could see the waves thundering up the beach, and every flash of lightning cracked the sky in two, lighting up the raindrops like stars. "What did you hear?" I asked again, but she was still ignoring me. Her eyes were fixed on the night sky above the ocean. "There!" she suddenly yelled and pointed into the storm. I squinted and tried to look what she'd spotted. "There, boy, look!" Another flash of lightning lit up the sky, and I finally saw what Granny was pointing at. High above the sea was a huge black raven frantically beating its wings against the wind and rain. It whirled upwards, then vanished back into the night. Another bolt of lightning flashed, and I saw the raven was closer this time, and there was something riding on its back, a small figure, hunched forward, holding on for its life. "What is it, Granny?" I asked. "A fairy? A pook?" "A goblin," Granny said. "It's a messenger." All the hairs on the back of my neck tingled with excitement. Who was sending us a message by goblin post? "Quick, boy!" Granny barked at me. "It won't last long out there. Run and let it in." I leaped down the tower steps, 2, then 3 at a time. Down around the corner, down around the corner, down around the corner. "Come on, Frankie," I huffed to myself as I sprinted. My brain started racing. The storm outside was getting worse. It looked like something from my real-life adventures of Captain Plank books. What if the goblin messenger gave up and flew away? I wasn't about to miss out on the chance of some real excitement. Only brilliant things arrived by goblin post. I reached the door at the bottom of the tower steps and barged through it without checking if anything. Ugh! Before I could stop myself, I ran straight into Nancy, the hotel cook. She screamed with fright and toppled backwards onto the carpet, waggling her legs in the air, all 8 of them. This is probably a good time to tell you that Nancy is a giant spider, and I mean a really giant one, an Orkney brittleback to be precise. She's the last of her kind and has been working at the hotel ever since it opened. If Nancy stands on her back legs, her head touches the ceiling, and she can easily reach all the way across the kitchen to grab the salt and pepper when she's cooking at the stove. So she's a whirlwind when it comes to making food for lots of guests. Don't think big scary spider from a monster movie though. There's nothing monstrous about Nancy. It's also pretty hard to find her scary when she speaks with a Scottish accent and wears spectacles, a flowery apron, fluffy slippers on her 4 back legs, and has a bluish-purplish perm. "Oh, Frankie," she said, blinking all 8 of her eyes at me. "Where are you off to in such a hurry?" "No time to explain," I puffed. All I could think about was getting to Mum in reception and letting the raven and its goblin rider into the hotel. I was still so far away. There were about a squillion hallways and staircases between me and the ground floor. Storm, raven, goblin. Nancy clambered back to her feet, then touched my forehead as if checking for a temperature. "Are you all right, my lamb? A goblin messenger, Nancy, out in the storm," I finally managed to shout. "I have to tell Mum." Nancy's face lit up. "Ooh, goblin post, that's unexpected. Quick." Nancy nodded and a look of determination spread across her face. She grabbed me under the arms and swung me over her shoulder. "Right you are, ducky." With that, Nancy raced along the top floor hallway with me clutching tightly to her bristles. I loved riding on Nancy's back. There aren't many things that can out-sprint an Orkney brittleback. She click-clacked down the corridors like an 8-legged rocket, sometimes running right up the wall and across the ceiling to avoid guests that were coming and going from their bedrooms to see what all the noise was about. "Excuse us," Nancy shouted as we ran past Madam Macready, an ancient banshee who had checked in yesterday. The poor old thing screamed in shock so loudly that all the light bulbs down the corridor exploded. In no time at all, we had reached the top of the great spiral staircase that wound its way straight down through the middle of the hotel to the reception hall on the ground floor. "Here we go, Frankie," Nancy huffed over her shoulder. I squinted my eyes and gritted my teeth as she started leaping down the stairs, 10 steps at a time. "We'll be there in a jiffy." As we rounded the next bend of the great staircase, I spotted Lady Leonora Grey wafting her way up the stairs towards us. Usually she haunts Hampton Court Palace, but every summer she takes a break from scaring tourists and comes to haunt the hotel instead. Ghosts are so weird. They don't need rooms or beds or toilets. Instead they rent stairs to wander up and down, moaning to themselves. Not much of a holiday, if you ask me. "Woe is me!" Lady Leonora was shrieking to herself. "Despair!" "Watch out!" I shouted. "Get out of the way!" Nancy joined in, but it was obvious Lady Leonora wasn't listening. Ghosts never listen. They're too busy wailing and gnashing their teeth to pay attention to other people, even a boy riding a giant speeding spider. "Fine," Nancy grunted, and without bothering to slow down, she ran straight through Lady Leonora. I love running through ghosts. Mum and Dad always tell me off if they catch me doing it, but it's so much fun. It feels like ice-cold popping candy all over your skin. "Do you mind?" Lady Leonora screeched as she vanished between us. "How rude!" We were nearly halfway down the great staircase now, but I'd already spotted more guests in the way as we rounded the next curve. A family of impalumps were hobbling their way upstairs, dragging their suitcases behind them. They looked up with wide eyes as we gallumped closer and closer. "Oh, bother," Nancy said as we sped downwards. I could almost hear a plan forming inside her head. "Hold on, Frankie, and whatever you do, don't let go." Before I even had time to think about wetting my pants with fear, Nancy looped a silky strand of web over the banister, and just before we ran smack into the petrified impalumps, she jumped.